Hello, Sci-Fi World. I'm Jeremy Saulnier, director and writer of Green Room.
Why did you decide to do this film and why a title with another color?
Yes, the title. Blue, then green. But actually, the green came first. Green Room was an idea I had from probably 10 years ago. But after the success of my last film, Blue Ruin, I was looking at my opportunities and maybe doing a studio movie or something, but then I just retreated to my safe place, which is to make a crazy genre movie for all the fans and for myself, my 19-year-old self actually, and do a film that I thought no one else could do, because that's I think what is best for my career and best for my approach to filmmaking, which is fans first. I make films that I want to see, and I look for a wild ride. I look for intensity, and I look for just a heightened level of storytelling. And so Green Room was pulling on my love of genre filmmaking, my need for more than just a mundane experience, and my history in the punk rock scene. I just pulled those resources together, and it was the only choice actually once I did the math.
You mentioned your punk rock scene. We have a lot of films here in Sitges about music, like Death Candy, Death Gas. What's happening right now to do so many films about music? What's the connection between art and music?
I'm not quite sure why there's always this sort of convergence of. I also had that problem with titles. I think the year Blue Ruin was released, there was Blue is the Warmest Color, Blue Bird, and 4 or 5 other Blue movies. And now there's like 5 or 6 Room movies. There's Room, there's The Keeping Room, there's Green Room. I don't know, I guess you think you're so original. But as far as music, I think they go hand in hand, especially the style of filmmaking. It's very aggressive, it's propulsive, and for me, it's just a inevitable convergence of my upbringing. So the other thing is there's an aesthetic associated. Not only is it sonically so perfect for the genre, it's gorgeous. I mean, I can get a Mad Max aesthetic for cheap. It's not post-apocalyptic or dark world. It's the here and now contemporary cinema, but I get mohawks and makeup and spikes and leather and blood and dust and all that. So I think it's a very gorgeous cinematic texture.
So in your movies, in this one and the last one, violence hurts not only the characters but the spectators.
Yeah.
You seem not to have any kind of fascination about violence. Instead, it's a violence that hurts.
Yeah, I think it's more responsible to make violence unappealing, and if it gives people a gut punch and makes them want to retch, maybe that's what violence should do. But primarily I use it as a narrative tool. I try not to be too gratuitous, but I do think it's more responsible at times to show full frontal disgusting violence on camera, so you don't get off that easy. You don't get to just clap and say hooray, or even worse, you don't get to just discard that life and not worry about it. It's just out of your mind. We have to deal with bodies and the utility of disposing of them, and the trauma and the toll it takes on the victim and the killer. So for some reason I've come up through violence. Recreating it is an art form, whether it be action, choreography. It's like a dance. The timing, the technical arts and crafts element behind the scenes, and makeup effects. But I try and use it responsibly only when it will heighten the experience and not just be some kind of macabre, show.
About the casting, you had a problem with 2 Star Trek stars. Is there any kind of conflict between generations?
The funny thing is, we have some Star Trek crossover. We've got some Fright Night remake crossover, but I kind of have to disregard that. Star Trek doesn't really exist in the world of Green Room, as far as the franchise and the characters. I was just going for the best talent I could find. And now that I've stuck to my guns and cast them only on their merits, after we release the film, we'll definitely capitalize on the huge franchises that they bring and the audiences and the Twitter followers and all that stuff. But I definitely have to block all that stuff out when I'm making a movie, but then cash in when we're all done.
Okay. You don't need a lot of time to introduce characters. Characters define themselves because of the action and the situation, and also the way look at each other, and not by the dialogue or.
Yeah, it's really important to me, you know, and like any filmmaker, my tastes might change, preferences might evolve. I don't know, but right now it bugs the shit out of me when you have forced character arcs, really dishonest romances, things that need to happen because some executive wants to give you the nose. So I let my characters evolve naturally, and even if they don't have the proper arc, you know, how many people in the punk rock scene or just in my life, how many friends have amazing character arcs? We're all just people, and I let the action rule the story. And that being said, I find so much rich character development in just these nuanced reactions to what some might consider minutia, is where I thrive. I mean, I love seeing people, I love lingering on things that most films won't. They'll cut right away from it, time cut to this, get to the point, get to the plot, and I just sit pretty and watch people flail in all their human glory, and that's where I think true character comes out of.
Your characters are away from social media to make it easier for you, or is it to keep them offline, off the grid, or is it part of their character?
Well, I think social media for me, it was, you know, it's convenient, but also we address cell phones and all that as far as the story. It's hard to tell a modern, secluded story. Although in Oregon, you know, there's not much cell service, so I think we're pretty safe. But it also was a legitimate statement about punk and about music and about artificiality and social media and who you're playing to. In the punk scene, the real value is your presence. You have to actually be there. And if you're doing everything through social media in a virtual way, it loses so much value. And the intimacy of performance is also important. Like when you go see a punk band like 20 years ago, that was just for the people in attendance. There was no cell phone cameras rolling video. No one was periscoping it live. The jokes, the performances, the violence, whatever was there was real, and it wasn't for an audience. It was not a show for anyone else who was than for people who were in the room. And then that's what is important to this band is they're clinging on to the old days. They're clinging on to when there was that intimacy and this sort of network that was through, you know, fanzines and phone calls. And you had to be there at the right place at the right time to find out where the show was, or you'd go catch out where all the flyers were, or you got to go to a show to get the flyers to the next show. You can't just check online from the safety of your own bedroom. You had to be there, and so that was the point of that. It's just like the Ain't Rights, the band, the fictional band in the movie. They're kind of carving their way through a tour and seeing the scene kind of die before them, and that creates this sort of desperate need to play this one gig. And unfortunately, it seems like it's one of the last vestiges of a true punk rock scene. But there's this dark side, of course, and they come head to head with that.
What is the dark side?
Oh, neo-Nazi skinheads.
Okay. Yeah. There is a political point of view there. It's not so explicit.
Right.
But it's not a statement, but it's there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know, using like an ultra left-wing racist group I didn't want to get too involved in those politics. I wanted to focus on characters on both sides of this confrontation. But there is a lot about learned hatred and aggression, and how it's not really native to us as humans, or pit bulls who are bred for a certain gameness, to hold on, to latch on with their powerful jaws. They're actually a friendly breed. They're just, humans intervene and they create these beasts that actually mean well, but when something is triggered in them, they can't stop until they kill. But I was using this sort of left-wing fringe group, and if there is any political statement outright, it's focusing on the mainstream right wing of America, and more about this corporatist hierarchy and power structure in general. It's about people at the top protecting their own interests and disseminating false information and misleading ideology to those underneath them who battle each other and create all this carnage, and the people at top never get their hands dirty. So it's more about the kind of structure and just sort of and class divide than it was about, you know, picking on Nazis. They're low-hanging fruit.
And what about the other music? Not the punk music, but the original score for the movie. It's like new age, ethereal at the beginning. What could you say about it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to treat the narrative with a very different palette than I mean, there's lots of tense old school punk, there's grindcore, there's some black metal in there, lots of different sub-genres of this aggressive music, and I thought the worst thing to do would be to add on to that with a similar vibe. We do, you know, the composers came up with an idea to kind of use the concept of feedback and some of the instrumentation, but the score would be more of that synth vibe and have an orchestral feel to it as a complement, so they wouldn't cross over. Also, we had to rescore some of the movie because when you have throbbing bass coming through walls and it just kind of muddles up the whole soundtrack, you have to redesign your score so they don't compete too much.
Can you speak a bit about this duality in the characters? Because the good guys are thieves, bad guys are very smart, and they use the brains not only their muscles. How do you build the characters?
Well, the key was to make sure that, you know, this is not some kind of torture porn thing where there's a sadistic element. No one in Green Room wants the violence to occur that night, and it's about how it spirals out of control. It is about brutal indifference and a lack of respect for others and a just like insane instinct for basic self-preservation. And when one act of violence occurs, it causes this downward spiral into the abyss, but it's about pragmatism and brutality and indifference. And on each side of the door you have the band trapped in the room and the skinhead squad outside kind of swirling and circling the whole time. It was about focusing on the very human elements and how such violence occurs, and I think that was the point, is to keep everybody human. And as the film progresses, hopefully bad, good, you know, left wing, right wing, whatever it is, it all starts to fade away, and they're all stripped down to just these basic aboriginal, like, human beings, and it gets to a very stripped down struggle. So
I don't see any particular reference in the movie to other movies. I don't think it's a referential movie, but it reminds me a lot of some 70s movies, Don Siegel movies in the 70s. I don't know if this was a reference for you or this was an influence for you, 70s movies.
For sure. I mean, you know, when I set about to make a movie, I want to be a highly original genius with no other influences. But no, they all seep in, and it helps to pitch the movie and to have images to refer to for the crew, because the key is to make sure, like, when, you know, and people can classify Green Room as a horror film, that's fine, But for me, it's a battle movie. It's a war movie. It's about keeping it grounded and real and human. Again, there's no sadistic element here. But I pulled on River's Edge from 1986. This is a very cool Pacific Northwest movie.
Hunter. No,
It's it's and Ellsworth shot that. I mean, it's like the visuals are great. We both shot in Oregon. Assault on Precinct 13 sounded like it was too close to this movie, so I actually never had watched it. It was one of the few Carpenter films that escaped me. So I waited to watch that till after I finished my screenplay. But I found it was just amazing in that it didn't try hard to be more than what it was. It reveled in being a very simple siege film. And what I don't like is convoluted plot and unnecessary nonsense just to construct things so it's more complicated and gives you the formula. But I also referred to Platoon and Apocalypse Now, and definitely the texture of the Road Warrior, because it's those muddy tires and the dust and the dirt, and it's these 80s films and 70s films, pre CG, pre this new wave that hit in the 90s that just killed me. Is artificial lighting styles, very hard and over colored and overdone. So I like those, like RoboCop, like this makeup show. It's sci-fi, or is it action? I don't know, but it's this blunt, beautiful, steely blue textured movie that has everything I'm looking for. And that's what I was aiming for with Green Room. Was like, it's a throwback movie, but not supposed to be some kind of joke, just to revel in that craft and the quality. And we did augment the film with some CG, but it seems like it's all practical effects. It's all invisible and it all seems real and grounded. That's what I love.
We have to finish.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.